Hey, Applied English. One thing I forgot to mention at the end of the first part of our lesson today is that your assignment for vocabulary is just to click on the document right here. This will actually pull up the very same one that I created inside of our video. So all the definitions will be there. My 3 example sentences will be there, and then the remaining 7 sentences are ones for you to write for me. So I'm sure you guys have figured that out already. But if you haven't done that little assignment yet, once again, see if you can get that one done by the midpoint of this week so that we can move on as well. Let's go back into day 6 and we'll look at the rest of our agenda as we finish up this lesson with some reading. Second part of this lesson, please watch through the Thank You Ma'am reading video. That's what you're working on right now. We will work through the discussion questions together. So we'll see some discussion questions first, some things I want you to look for as we read Thank You Ma'am. And we'll discuss those in our next lesson. So for now, I'm going to do the reading for you to track with me. And you're free to take notes as you watch. We'll look at the questions first so you know what kind of notes that you might want to take. In our next lesson, like I said, we'll discuss Thank You Ma'am, discuss what it means, discuss its story elements and those kinds of things. We're also going to take a look at some notes and practice for spelling errors, especially homophones as well. That's in our next lesson. All right, Thank You Ma'am reading. Let's get it. Please watch this video, you're watching it right now, of me reading Thank You Ma'am by Langston Hughes. Discussion questions are in this PowerPoint, so we'll look at that first actually. I will open up the text of our story, which is attached here at the bottom too. So a couple things we're looking for as we read Thank You Ma'am. Our main focus with reading this story together here is setting. This story especially is a great way to study how authors use setting to bring out their themes. So 3 things that I want you to look for as we read today. First of all, where does the story take place? I want you to think large scale and small scale here. So large scale for where might be where this is taking place in the world, if you can kind of pinpoint a city or a state or a country, that kind of thing. Small scale would be like things like what kind of building does it take place in. So a small scale might be inside of a school or inside of a single room like a classroom. Large scale might be this story is taking place in China, or it's taking place in Canada, or it's taking place on the moon. Next question along with that, once again, setting is also, it's not only place, but it's also time. When does this story take place? Again, large scale, when is this happening in history? See if you can find some details that show us when in history this story is taking place. Is it taking place in 1654? Is it taking place in the future? Is it taking place at a different point in time? Small scale would be like, what time of day is it? Or what time of year is it? Those kinds of questions for time. And again, the third part of setting is cultural context. Does this story seem to have a specific cultural context? If so, what culture? Keep an eye out for those things as we read. We're going to discuss this point especially in our next lesson. A couple of other small things to look for in this story. To review plot, what event in this story seems to be the story's climax or turning point? What's that moment in the story where everything changes? Along with that, is the main conflict in this story internal or external? And then how is this conflict resolved at the end? Keep an eye out for conflict in this story. We'll talk through that in our next lesson too. Some basics for character. First of all, who's the protagonist of this story? What character does this story seem to follow the most? And along with that, which character in this story is dynamic and which character is static? We only have 2 characters in this story. I will suggest to you that one character is dynamic, one character changes quite a bit. The other character does not change much. This character is rather static. And the last thing to watch out for as we read the story together today is the theme. Again, in other words, the theme is the central message of the story. So what is that central message that Langston Hughes is trying to communicate in this story? As a little bonus question, we'll tie everything together in our next lesson by looking at how this story's setting contributes to this theme. Again, we're not going to answer these today. We only really have enough time to actually read this story. I'll also point out vocab words as they pop up in this story too. In our next lesson, we'll discuss this thing together. Let's open it up. And a very, very, very short story. This is Thank You Ma'am by Langston Hughes. I highly recommend you read this along with me. I hope you can see it clearly enough on your screen that you can follow this in video. But again, the whole text is there if you want to open it up and read it on your own. I'm going to read this video today. We're not going to do a whole lot of discussing today, but in our next lesson, I want you to be ready to kind of see how these elements work in this story. This is Thank You Ma'am by Langston Hughes. She was a large woman with a large purse that had everything in it but hammer and nails. It had a long strap, and she carried it slung across her shoulder. It was about 11 o'clock at night, and she was walking alone when a boy ran up behind her and tried to snatch her purse. The strap broke with the single tug the boy gave it from behind, but the boy's weight and the weight of the purse combined caused him to lose his balance. So instead of taking off full blast as he had hoped, the boy fell on his back on the sidewalk, and his legs flew up. The large woman simply turned around and kicked him square in his blue jeans sitter. Then she reached down, picked the boy up by his shirt front, and shook him until his teeth rattled. After that, the woman said, "Pick up my pocketbook, boy, and give it here." She still held him, but she bent down enough to permit him to stoop and pick up her purse. Then she said, "Now ain't you ashamed of yourself?" Firmly gripped by his shirt front, the boy said, "Yes'm." The woman said, "What'd you want to do it for?" The boy said, "I didn't aim to." She said, "You a lie." By that time, 2 or 3 people passed, stopped, turned to look, and some stood watching. "If I turn you loose, will you run?" asked the woman. "Yes'm," said the boy. "Then I won't turn you loose," said the woman. She did not release him. "I'm very sorry, lady. I'm sorry," whispered the boy. "Mm-hmm. And your face is dirty. I got a great mind to wash your face for you. Ain't you got nobody home to tell you to wash your face?" "No'm," said the boy. "Then it will get washed this evening," said the large woman, starting up the street, dragging the frightened boy behind her. He looked as if he were 14 or 15, frail and willow-eyed, in tennis shoes and blue jeans. Notice that vocab word frail right there being used to describe this boy. Notice that we don't have this boy's name just yet, but we are described what he's like. He's young, he's 14 or 15, he's frail, and he's just tried to steal this lady's purse. Notice what this story's exposition gives us, right? It gives us characters. We've got a boy and the lady that he just tried to rob. We've got a place. We're on some kind of city street, and a time. It's nighttime. They said 11 p.m. early in the story. And we have some conflict as well. We have a problem, right? This boy has tried to steal this lady's purse, and she caught him red-handed. She's got this boy in her grasp. Let's see what happens. The woman said, "You ought to be my son. I would teach you right from wrong. Least I can do right now is to wash your face. You hungry?" "No'm," said the being dragged boy. "I just want you to turn me loose." "Was I bothering you when I turned that corner?" asked the woman. "No'm." By the way, yes'm means yes, ma'am, and no'm means no, ma'am. Page 2. "But you put yourself in contact with me," said the woman. "If you think that contact is not going to last a while, you got another thought coming. When I get through with you, sir, you're going to remember Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones." Sweat popped out on the boy's face as he began to struggle. Mrs. Jones stopped, jerked him around in front of her, and put a half Nelson about his neck, and continued to drag him up the street. When she got to her door, she dragged the boy inside, down a hall, and into a large kitchenette-furnished room at the rear of the house. She switched on the light and left the door open. The boy could hear other roomers laughing and talking in the large house. Some of their doors were open, too, so he knew he and the woman were not alone. The woman still had him by the neck in the middle of her room. I always laugh at that image of this old lady she's got this kid in a headlock just dragging him into her house. She said, "What's your name?" "Roger," answered the boy. "Then, Roger, you go to that sink and wash your face," said the woman. Whereupon she turned him loose at last. Roger looked at the door, looked at the woman, looked at the door, and went to the sink. "Let the water run till it gets warm," she said. "Here's a clean towel." "You gonna take me to jail?" asked the boy, bending over the sink. "Not with that face, I wouldn't take you nowhere," said the woman. "Here I'm trying to get home to cook me a bite to eat, and you snatch my pocketbook. Maybe you ain't been to your supper either, late as it be, have you?" "There's nobody home at my house," said the boy. "Then we'll eat," said the woman. "I believe you're hungry, or been hungry, to try to snatch my pocketbook." "I wanted a pair of blue suede shoes," said the boy. Notice that other vocab word? He wants a nice pair of leather shoes. "Well, you didn't have to snatch my pocketbook to get some suede shoes," said Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones. "You could have asked me." "Ma'am?" The water dripping from his face, the boy looked at her. There was a long pause, a very long pause. After he had dried his face, and not knowing what else to do, dried it again, the boy turned around, wondering what next. The door was open. He could make a dash for it down the hall. He could run, 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 run. The woman was sitting on the daybed. After a while, she said, "I were young once, and I wanted things I could not get." There was another long pause. The boy's mouth opened. Then he frowned, but not knowing he frowned. The woman said, "You thought I was going to say but, didn't you? You thought I was going to say, but I didn't snatch people's pocketbooks. Well, I wasn't going to say that." Pause. Silence. "I have done things too, which I would not tell you, son. Neither tell God if he didn't already know. So you sit down while I fix us something to eat. You might run that comb through your hair, so you'll look presentable." In another corner of the room, behind a screen, was a gas plate and an icebox refrigerator. Mrs. Jones got up and went behind the screen. The woman did not watch the boy to see if he was going to run now, nor did she watch her purse, which she left behind on her daybed. But the boy took care to sit on the far side of the room, where he thought she could easily see him out of the corner of her eye, if she wanted to. He did not trust the woman not to trust him, and he did not want to be mistrusted now. So that's a kind of a confusing sentence, right? He did not trust the woman not to trust him. That's basically saying that this boy knows that he's done something wrong and that this lady should have no reason to trust him, and yet she's left him alone. So he doesn't quite understand what's going on in this moment, right? This lady, who he's just tried to rob, has left him unattended in her house. Let's see what happens. Do you need somebody to go to the store?" asked the boy. "Maybe to get some milk or something?" "Don't believe I do," said the woman, "unless you want sweet milk yourself. I was going to make cocoa out of this canned milk I got here." "That will be fine," said the boy. She heated some lima beans and ham she had in the icebox, made the cocoa, and set the table. The woman did not ask the boy anything about where he lived, or his folks, or anything else that would embarrass him. Instead, as they ate, she told him about her job in a hotel beauty shop that stayed open late, what the work was like, and how all kinds of women came in and out, blondes, redheads, and Spanish. Then she cut him a half of her 10-cent cake. "Eat some more, son," she said. When they were finished eating, she got up and said, "Now here, take this $10 and buy yourself some blue suede shoes. And next time, do not make the mistake of latching onto my pocketbook, nor nobody else's, because shoes come by devilish like that will burn your feet. I gotta get my rest now, but I wish you would behave yourself, son, from here on in." She led him down the hall to the front door and opened it. "Good night, behave yourself, boy," she said, looking out into the street. The boy wanted to say something else other than "Thank you, ma'am," to Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones, but he couldn't do so as he turned at the barren stoop and looked back at the large woman in the door. He barely managed to say thank you before she shut the door, and he never saw her again. So once again, we don't have much time to discuss those discussion questions right now, but we'll do so in our next lesson. Main thing we're going to talk about is setting, so if you need to, take another look through this story to see if you can figure out where it's set, when it's set, and what kind of culture it comes from, if any. We're also going to talk a little bit about this story's plot, especially its conflict, and we're going to talk about the two characters that we've met in this story as well. We'll finish by discussing its theme, too. So take a look through this story again if you like. We'll be taking a look at it in depth in our next lesson. Blessings on your day.